And since its founding nearly 20 years ago, the Scholars at Risk Network, we've received over 5,000 requests for assistance from researchers and scholars in more than 120 countries. Within the 5,000 requests for assistance, we can see three broad categories of risk that are being reported. First of all, researchers ask questions, and those questions can be threatening to authorities. So this means risks due to the content of a researcher's work. For example, maybe a professor from Colombia who received death threats from his publications that linked Colombian drug traffickers to government officials. Second, researchers are reporting risks due to their status. They become prominent members of the community. And this means that attacks on one such high-profile individual can be an efficient means of sending a message or a warning to others to behave. Third, risks because of their exercise of fundamental human rights. So, for example, a legal scholar from Iran who was a vocal advocate for the defense of women's rights, and her participation in peaceful protests and signature campaigns led to her arrest and imprisonment. It's important also to note that threats can come from a range of different sources, from state and non-state actors, including militant and extremist groups, police and military forces, government authorities, and even from within universities themselves. Threats can really range in severity. A scholar may initially suffer some form of subtle harassment, including warnings or surveillance, and the scholar's colleagues may themselves be warned to avoid the scholar, or may decide to do so out of their own will to avoid a similar fate. So this can in turn escalate even further, and leaving the scholar more vulnerable to serious threats, including arbitrary dismissal, exile, and disappearance, and even death. And then finally, over the last year, the largest percentage of scholars that are requesting assistance from Scholars at Risk are coming from Turkey, followed by Syria, Yemen, and Iran.
Consequences, of course, vary depending on the nature of the threat and context, of course. Sometimes academics may survive with minor frustration, but most of the time they might lose their jobs, their titles, their affiliations, their research interrupts, and they might lose permission to travel, as well as their liberty, and in some cases, their lives. When researchers are, let's say, lucky to find a safe place to continue their research, they have to overcome so many practical and logistic issues. And most of the time they have to leave their home countries abruptly, and it's possible not to be able to get ready for their departure. Moreover, aside from violent or coercive pressures, higher education communities today are under enormous structural and competitive pressures arising from globalization, commercialization, as well as the commodification of knowledge. There's also impact on the researchers who stay in their home countries when they see their colleagues who have been forced to leave. This situation might cause a chilling effect when people see the persecution of their peers. To avoid similar consequences, they may remain silent, try to prevent discord with the university administration or with the state officials. They may drop out from the extramural activities, or they may try to stay away from the advocacy, and even they change their research and teaching topics to safer one in order to get rid of the troubles. Threats to academic freedom also impair the quality of teaching research skills and discourses, and when scholars or students can explore specific issues or specific topics, of course, society doesn't get the benefit of this research. So take, for example, gun violence or pesticides or the global warming, ethnic or racial conflicts. When that research doesn't happen, of course, all the society suffers.
Well, a good first step would be to visit the Inspire Europe website, and the website will point you towards a wealth of resources, best practices, webinars, trainings, and events on the topic of researchers at risk. some examples of concrete actions that people can take. If you're a member of faculty or staff at a higher education institution, please consider hosting a researcher at your university. You might invite them to give a talk or invite them for a longer period of time as a visiting scholar. If you're a government representative interested in knowing more about or interested in setting up a fellowship or employment scheme in your country for researchers at risk, the Inspire Europe project is ready to advise on that and to share best practices. And also, if you are a researcher or an academic applying for Horizon 2020 or Erasmus Plus funds, you could consider including attention to researchers at risk in your application. So, for example, if your university, your enterprise, or your ministry is applying for MSCA co-funds, consider including specific career development supports. If you are in industry, Inspire Europe is interested in developing diversity and inclusion partnerships and also skills training and placement schemes within industry for researchers at risk. We do encourage everyone with an interest in the topic to take the online course, which is called Dangerous Questions: Why Academic Freedom Matters. We're encouraging educators, where possible, to really integrate that into your courses so that the next generation of researchers in Europe understands that when researchers are at risk and when they are excluded from participating in the global research circuit, not only are those individual lives and careers at risk, but the quality and the future of research is also at stake.